Welcome into this beautiful Monday morning edition of Pushing the Pile, brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Make every moment more. Mike Renner, Kyle Long, and we have a third co-host joining us today. JP Acosta is back, and not only is he back, Kyle, JP Acosta is the newest member of Pushing the Pile. He will be on full-time with us. JP, dude, thanks so much for joining us. We're so happy to have you aboard, my man.
Thank you guys for having me. I guess I did pretty good the first couple of times I was on here. So thank you guys for having me. Of course, if you don't know me, I'm JP Acosta. I'm just a nerd who really likes football. I wrote a column called Established to Fun because football is fun. And I like talking about really fun stuff with football. So I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to talk some ball with you guys. I'm excited to have some fun.
Yeah, and I want to point out the fact that Mike Renner, who is he's got his master's degree in film watching and opinion having in the scouting department. When Mike was explaining to me who and what you are, JP, in the football world, the guy it was like a young physics student saying that, Albert Einstein was coming to I don't even know if Albert Einstein did physics, but I'll tell you this much. He was excited about having you, and I was so impressed with you the first time you were on here. And I'm just glad that we are spoiled enough to have you on here way more often throughout the season.
Yeah, the thing that jumped off when I first, saw you on Twitter, saw you on other podcasts, was I was like, this guy is genuinely excited about football. And I think one of the biggest things that you see in media, the longer you get into it, is that a lot of people doing this don't actually love football, aren't actually excited to go in and watch tape. A lot of people actually get jaded, unfortunately, over the course of their careers working in football or working in sports media, and don't have the same excitement that fans do. And you can tell the ones that do, you can tell the ones that don't. JP, you 100% do. And that's why we are pumped to have you aboard. So we got a jam-packed show. First off the ball segment, we got a bunch of trades that went down. We have whatever the hell was going on with Shedeur Sanders and the media reaction over the course of the weekend.
Can we call it Shedeur Gate? Nobody's called it Shedeur Gate yet. And I just feel like there is so much that we are going to uncover, right? I mean, look, I was one of the guys that said, I'll stand on the table for Shedeur Sanders because nobody knows what it's like to grow up in a house like he did with a dad like he has had. And I remember feeling like the oddball, the odd man out in every social circle I was ever in. And for a very long time, I was introduced as Howie Long's son. And I'm sure that Shedeur Sanders got the same treatment and then some. My dad was great in one sport. Dion was great in two sports. He was the flashiest, best, smartest talking, smoothest, most marketable guy on the planet. I mean, and really pioneered this whole superstar thing, right? I mean, he was the first megastar. Shedeur is just the son of a megastar. And when I see him, I don't blame him or fault him for having the attitude or demeanor that he has. Look, the one way that you could be outstanding in our field is to be outstanding on the field. And unfortunately, the first time we saw him, he was pretty darn good out there. Some would say it wasn't great, but I would argue touchdowns are good. Staying in the pocket and delivering the throws on time and in rhythm is really good. And then last week happened, and he reverted back to a version of himself that he would admit wasn't good enough, and his teammates would admit wasn't good enough. But I would press back on people saying that there are offensive linemen involved in a conspiracy to defame or devalue a quarterback. Look, football is friggin' hard. Getting 11 guys on the same page is friggin' hard. Doing that with 11 guys that maybe didn't get snaps next to each other in training camp because there's 14 offensive linemen, 20 offensive linemen in camp. This rotation hasn't been in together. Look, it's a reps thing. It's a health thing. It's a random thing at times in the preseason. You're trying to get guys out there. I would push back on people saying that there is a conspiracy theory because, believe it or not, the NFL is bigger than Shedeur Sanders and Deion Sanders. And they don't even blink. The NFL moves on. There will be new superstars tomorrow. Born. There were superstars born today. In the state of Texas, there's probably a Hall of Famer born today. My point is this. Take the conspiracy stuff and walk with it. But if you want to look at film and you want to talk about the why with Shedeur Sanders, why there were struggles in the most recent preseason game, I don't have all the answers. I'm not a quarterback, but I can tell you this. There were guys open early in the down. And I'm not saying he's a pariah. What I'm saying is he's a quarterback who's not perfect yet. And like any other quarterback, he's got a lot of work to do. I said the same kind of stuff about Caleb Williams last year, threw for 3,500 yards with 2 offensive coordinators, 2 head coaches. So take everything I'm saying with a grain of salt. But I think if you're going to stand up here and say there's a conspiracy, it's disrespectful to the other guys out there who are also trying to make the team, make a living, feed their family, all that good stuff, all that cliche stuff. So I'd call that a cop-out. It's bullshit. I would just say football's hard, okay? Football's hard.
And realistically, like you said, asking 5 offensive linemen who are at the bottom of the roster to make themselves look bad intentionally to sink Shedeur Sanders, that doesn't make any sense. Like, imagine someone coming up to you and be like, hey, we need you to intentionally be bad at your job without a guarantee that you're going to make this team just so we make the other guy look bad.
Yes, sir.
I'm not going to agree to that. I'll be like, okay, you can just let me go now. But I think with Shedeur Sanders, he has sort of become the biggest, not the biggest, but one of the bigger names when it comes to how flawed like the major discussion around quarterback play has become. It is either you are the second coming and you are perfect and have no flaws, or you are the worst quarterback alive and do not deserve to see any snaps. I think with Shedeur, it's tough because he had the oblique injury week 2 after the good showing he had in week 1, and that set him back. You could tell that he didn't get the reps because of the injury, and he was still kind of feeling that. So he reverted back to what worked sort of in college, and that doesn't work in the NFL. I think when it comes to Sanders, it is overall, it's just really tough because you can tell in how he talks to the media that he is not unaware of his faults. He has said, like, yeah, those sacks were on me. I have to be better. He is.
If you take the tone out of it, he's saying exactly what you're supposed to say.
Exactly. Like, he has approached this in a way that you would want a guy of his stature as a quarterback for an NFL franchise. You want him to do. But we have sort of turned the Sanders discussion into either he is the best quarterback or he is the worst quarterback, which we have also done for every other quarterback in the league. So at some point, guys, it's just okay to just be okay. It's okay for a quarterback to just be good.
The people that are calling it a conspiracy, that are still in this wildly, Shedeur Sanders camp of he's being mistreated, are still stuck in January mock drafts, basically. They're still seeing him as the guy who was the number 2 overall pick back then, supposedly. And right or wrong, once you get to the NFL, you're treated where you're drafted as a rookie. If you're a 5th rounder, you're treated like a 5th rounder, unfortunately. And not only was he a 5th rounder, he was the 2nd quarterback they drafted in this draft. So, like, the NFL is going to give the player they drafted higher more opportunities. They're going to, they said it was no competition, but like, you are still a 5th round. Like, 5th round rookies just don't get the same opportunities that a 1st round rookie would, a vet that you signed to start for you would. Like, that's what I think the biggest thing is here is people have not come to grips with the fact that he fell to the 5th round, which means the NFL viewed him as 5th rounder, unfortunately. So the thing is, again, we've been hammering home. His career's not over. This was freaking 3 preseason games. Yeah. Like, we don't have to go nuts. He was always a guy that made most sense to develop on the bench somewhere and not step in and become a starter right away. That's exactly what he's going to be doing. So I think we've discussed it enough at this point. And I'm just looking forward to the point where we can just not actually talk about it and just see him next, training camp, see how far he's come then. And then we can discuss it again, because again, he was a 5th rounder. We don't have to go nuts over a guy who was a 5th rounder and looked worse than Dylan Gabriel over the course of the preseason. I think it's safe to say Dylan Gabriel looks closer to an NFL starter, doesn't obviously have maybe the physical skill set that Shedeur has to succeed in the long run. But if you're playing a guy right now in the NFL, I think a lot of people would lead Dylan Gabriel at this point.
Hey, I think it's important to point out and really confirm what you said about you're treated where you're drafted. Because I'll tell you what, if you're a guy who ends up as let's use Mitch Trubisky as an example.
Yep.
You're on the other end of the spectrum where people are now looking around into your zip code about where you were drafted and saying, well, Mahomes and Deshaun and all these other guys. So, like, that's unfair scrutiny for a guy like Trubisky, who ended up getting drafted where he did in Chicago. And then next thing you know, the book is written and closed on Mr. Trubisky because of where he was drafted. If he was a third-round pick, who knows? Second-round pick, who knows? And then I think about a guy who played quarterback for Northern Illinois by the name of Jordan Lynch. And I've talked about Jordan Lynch on this show before. Jordan Lynch was a dominant college player, okay? Tim Tebow, arguably the best college football player to ever do it, okay? One of the most storied legacies. Not a great pro. Couldn't throw very well. Jordan Lynch showed up. I don't even know if he was drafted. He might have been a 7th-round pick, something like that, 6th-round pick. But when he showed up, he wasn't Jordan Lynch, who was at the Heisman, get-together, okay? He was Jordan Lynch, 5th, 6th, 7th-round pick, trying to scrape to make a roster spot. I see this as the same type of situation. If Jordan Lynch's name was Shedeur Sanders, we would have heard a lot more about Jordan Lynch. Yeah. That's just the nature of the beast, dudes.
All right, some trades from over the weekend. I'm going to name them, and then you guys tell me which ones seem like the most interesting to you. Brian Robinson, Jr., running back for the Washington Commanders. He gets moved to the San Francisco 49ers. Obviously, this one, there were whispers about it for a while. The Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt hype train was legitimately out of control on fantasy Twitter. My timeline was an absolute mess of people tweeting about Bill Krosky-Merritt.
He went up 81 spots.
Sam Howell gets traded from the Vikings to the Eagles. Obviously, he's been oft-moved, former Commander, then former Seahawk, now Minnesota Viking, now Philadelphia Eagle. Derek Nottie gets moved from the Chiefs, back to the Chiefs from the New York Jets, back home. Fred Johnson gets moved back to the Eagles from the Jacksonville Jaguars, the offensive tackle there. And then Darian Kennard gets moved from the Eagles, where he was one of the many guards they added this offseason. He gets moved to the Green Bay Packers, where they're a little thin now with Jordan Morgan playing out at tackle.
So I think the one that fascinates me the most is actually the offensive line trades. And I think it's a larger point of what's sort of been a thing for the last couple of years within the NFL. And that is offensive line depth has kind of taken a hit when it comes to just overall how every team is sort of scrambling to find competence at your backup guard tackle spots. And there's nothing that really can be like fixed about it, because it's hard to find guys that are as big as an offensive lineman, that move like an offensive lineman, that are not already offensive linemen for teams that are currently in the NFL. So you just continue to move these guys around and try and just build the best unit that you can get. And it's tough because the offensive line depth in the NFL has taken, like I said, a little bit of a hit. That's not to say that it's bad, but I think that we're reaching a point where offensive line development, offensive line talent is going to be what separates good teams from great teams.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really glad you brought that up. Last year, throughout the course of the season, Mike and I really would just vocalize my thoughts about the importance of becoming an offensive line farm, where the crop that you grow, the crop that you bring into the building is offensive linemen. Because of the point that you made, there's no depth in the NFL. Okay, that first layer of ice, that's it. And then it's water. You can go right through it. If you have offensive linemen in your room that you're developing, with an offensive line coach that you trust, with a GM that understands the value of offensive linemen, the trades you can make, the moves that you can make in the offseason, I mean, it's like you have gold. You have gold there. I think that is truly the biggest thing. So if you're making moves at this point in the season, that's tough because you're not confident. And there's a lot of teams that are in that boat, not confident in the offensive linemen they have in their room. And only a few of these teams that aren't confident can afford to make the moves to gain these guys at the end of camp. The one that interests me, Mike, Brian Robinson to Kyle Shanahan, San Francisco 49ers. Now, my big gripe about the San Francisco 49ers was getting through to Kyle Shanahan, who was like brilliant in my opinion, but I don't know if he understands this. You can't use Christian McCaffrey as the volume shooter that you did for so long, okay? Because he is the straw that stirs the proverbial drink in the Bay Area. And if he's not available in week 17, week 18, I think that's squarely on Kyle Shanahan's shoulders. And to bring a guy like Brian Robinson Jr. into the building, you can split that share of carries. You can add another guy that's dynamic and dangerous. And I'm sure Shanahan will find a way to tailor make things for Brian Robinson as well. But you need this in San Francisco. And with the defensive question marks that we've had, I know Salah's there, but there's question marks defensively. This answers some of those question marks. We could just score more points. I like that for the Niners.
Yeah, and they've also been banged up at backup there outside of Christian McCaffrey. So I'm 100% with you, though. They need to find a way for Christian McCaffrey, if they're going to win Super Bowl, to not be on the sidelines come January, February. So it's necessary to cut that workload down in a way that they just didn't, right? When they were home a couple of years ago, it's like that dude was playing every single snap. It was truly insane. They were playing with fire and kind of got burned by it last year. All right. Those are your moves. Those are your Shedeur Sanders conspiracy breakdown. We're going to take a quick break. After that, our all preseason team, our picks for every single position. We're going to start with offense, do defense as well. Coming up right after this.
You can always count on Sundays with the NFL on CBS and Paramount Plus. So even if you can't count on accurate expiration dates,
that is a rookie mistake,
or people appreciating your fashion sense,
Jim, the crowd is not on board here.
you can always count on Sundays with the NFL on CBS, streaming on Paramount Plus.
Glad we wear our good jerseys.
Yeah. All right, JP, we asked you to do the heavy lifting here with the all preseason team. I'm going to give some guys afterwards, but this is your list with trial by fire. Your very first show as the full timer. So starting with quarterback, who you got in your all preseason team?
So my all preseason team quarterback is Max Brosmer from the Minnesota Vikings, formerly of the University of Minnesota. I was stunned watching him back on tape. And I know that there were some throws that he made that were really talented at Minnesota, stood out at the Shrine Bowl. But wow, just some of the anticipation and the confidence throwing over the middle of the field really stood out to me. The arm strength, some of the confidence in just throwing the ball downfield. You don't really see a lot of that from the preseason from guys that are backups that are more likely just to take the checkdowns, keep the ball moving. He is willing to take those chances over the middle of the field. And I think that stood out to the Vikings too, with Sam Howell being traded to the Eagles. Max Brosmer sort of won that QB2 job. I know they brought in Carson Wentz, but Brosmer is the guy that really stood out to me among all of the quarterbacks that played in the preseason outside of the starters. And I think he's going to get my QB1 for all preseason.
Yeah, I loved it. I remember reacting. I think it was a tweet that you sent, JP, and it was just like a cut up of. I think you reacted to a cut up tweet of this young gentleman, Max Brosmer, and I watched it, and it was like, oh my God, this is what offense is supposed to look like. Trust in the scheme, getting the ball out on time. It's not rocket science, but for whatever reason, some guys just understand it. It's like the difference between watching a pitcher go to the major leagues and just try to throw 100 all the time. You don't have to throw 100 all the time. Hit your spots, play within the game, trust your catcher, the coordinator, and good things happen. They got a good coordinator there, and yeah, winning that job would be sweet. The other guy that we saw was my buddy in Chicago who just got that $10 million deal. I mean, $10 million, I said, per year, and they're like, no total for Tyson Bagent. $10 million, okay? He costs like what a nice jet costs, which is a quarter of what quarterbacks are worth annually now. I think it's huge. Tyson Bagent was awesome in the same light you were talking about Max Brosmer. And you hear whispers of it in the Bears fan circles. They're like, Tyson Bagent, they often just say QB1 when talking about him. And I think it's wildly disrespectful. But also, like, you can't blame people for falling in love with what they see. And in the same light that Max Brosmer can move the football down the field, and people are like, well, that looks easy. Why don't we just do that all the time? That's what Bagent does for the Bears. Huge get for them. I know Mike's going to talk on Bagent as well. I've done enough love festing on social media for the week.
I was going to say, I couldn't believe you didn't bring up Jackson Dart, though, Kyle, given your love affair with Jackson Dart. But those two guys I would also throw in there. Brosmer, to me, though, his aggressiveness in that scheme makes him very intriguing, because that is like that's what you need to be successful in Kevin O'Connell offense, especially with the receivers they have. And obviously he wasn't playing with the guys out there that he will be throwing to if he should be called upon. So very interesting was he a UDFA? I can't even remember.
I think it was a UDFA.
Yeah. Very interesting that he's that good that quickly. And T-Bags is also UDFA. And dude, year 3 now of him, he had some plays that were just like guys bearing down on him. I tweeted out a cut up this morning. Like defenders
his back
bearing down on
to
him.
the D lineman, shimmy out,
And then
reverse pirouette, core strength throw. Are you kidding me?
Just immediately knows where to go. And, guys bearing down on him and throwing with anticipation. Things of that nature that just get you really excited about what he could be. So to get a backup like that with what he's already shown, back-to-back preseasons now, for $5 million a year on top of the 3 years you've had him being on his UDFA contract. Impressive. But we got to talk a little bit about Jackson Dart, because that game against the Patriots Thursday night, Giants fans were going off. I mean, they rightfully so. He had some sick downfield throws in that game. Now, I'm still of the opinion that given what I've seen from this preseason, they've not added much more to his plate from what we saw at Ole Miss. Like, he's still not doing the complex things you have to do to be an NFL quarterback consistently. But when you're accurate, when you're an athlete like he is, I think this is as good a start as you could have hoped for. I'm not replacing Russell Wilson just yet, but you have to be super encouraged if you're a Giants fan.
I think with Dart, the thing that stood out to me the most was he looked like he was in control. Nothing really looked too fast for him. He was able to evade pressure, didn't take a lot of sacks. Of course, I think some of the stuff that they did for him in the preseason was relatively a lot of quick game, a lot of the RPO stuff, like you said, that he did at Ole Miss. And they didn't really add to some of the complex NFL quarterbacking. But you also don't really have to right now. I think the thing that stood out to me the most last year with how Sean Payton brought along Bo Nix last year was let him do the easy stuff during the season early and then add on as he gets more reps, as he gains time being an NFL quarterback. So I think with Dart, the thing that really stood out is he is a good NFL athlete. I'm not going to say he's like a monster that you can like give the ball to on design QB runs is like your main diet in the run game, but he can pull a keeper. He can scramble and create first downs with his legs. And I think that he showed that he doesn't turn the ball over. And that's going to be really important in this offense. Like you said, I'm not taking the starting job away from Russell Wilson as quickly as other people are, especially given the early part of the Giants schedule, which includes 2 Philadelphia games and a Denver game in between them. So I'm hesitant to give
those to Russell
starting job, but let Russell Wilson take some of the beatings early and then play Dart later.
All right, let's get to the running back position.
So my running back here, I wanted to go with Bill Krosky-Merritt as an honorable mention. Also want to shout out Keaton Mitchell for coming back from the knee injury and looking quick. But when it comes to how much this guy is going to be important to their offense in the regular season, I actually went with Ollie Gordon II from Miami. And the reason I went with him is largely because the Miami Dolphins, I've always said the question for them is, can they do it on a cold, rainy night in Stoke? Can you move the ball in short yardage situations? Can you move the ball in cold weather? Can you be more physical than the other team? The Dolphins have not shown that ability to be physical. They have not had that short yardage back. And Tyreek Hill caught a lot of flack for saying that
the truth,
the biggest thing that they needed was to take Devon Achane off the field on 3rd and short. But he's kind of correct because Achane, he can't be the body blows guy. Enter Ollie Gordon, who showed in the preseason that he can still break tackles. He can still create in short yardage situations. I think when you saw what they did in short yardage, when you had Jalen Wright, when you had Achane in the game, they lost on first contact too quickly. I think Gordon being a bigger back, his ability to just always fall forward, that's the biggest thing, especially if you're going to be a short yardage guy. If you can always fall forward, that's going to turn a lot of those 3rd and 1 stops for no gains into first downs. That'll turn goal line runs into touchdowns. And that's what's going to matter for Ollie Gordon early in his career. So I wanted to shout out Gordon for what he's going to mean to this Miami offense.
Yeah, Gordon was a guy who his difference between his sophomore tape and his junior tape at Oklahoma State was just so massive. I had him as top 5 running back heading into the season. Afterwards, I didn't even have it as top 12. Like, I was just like, what happened to him? He had the preseason DUI. Things went way south for Oklahoma State last season, but the talent was always there. And he was still a young guy coming out. I figured he would like transfer, try to rehab his draft stock sort of thing. No, he came out still as only a third-year player. But what he has uniquely that obviously no one else you mentioned in that Dolphins room has, but just to hammer it home, he's not only like has size in terms of like weight, he is very long, frame wise, looks almost like a tight end. He's 6'2". He's got like 33-inch arms. The guy you mentioned falling forward, when that guy falls forward versus a 5'8" to 5'9" running back, he's getting almost like a yard more just in terms of where he can stretch with his arms. So very much the kind of back that they need to succeed there in Miami. Let's get to the receiver position, where 3 guys here. I'm going to name them out. Isaac Tesla of the Detroit Lions, Terrell Shavers of the Buffalo Bills, and then Efton Chisholm of the New England Patriots.
I was so excited to talk about Isaac Tesla. I was a little skeptical when they picked him in the 3rd round because I thought, like, I knew he had talent, but the lack of production at Arkansas I thought would hold him off till day 3. But sometimes drafting big, tall, fast, and doesn't drop passes, sometimes that works in the NFL. And I think what Isaac Tesla showed in the preseason was he has this ability to go up and get the ball in contested situations. It's not like he is creating separation with foot quickness, with speed. He is just put it in the area code and he's going to go get it. That's where most of his touchdowns came on, which is downfield contested situations. He also showed that he can block his ass off, which is going to play early in Detroit. Dan Campbell actually shouted out to Slaw for his blocking in a press conference where they were like, yeah, he's going to play early because of his ability to block. He also had some pretty cool punt gunner reps. So if you show me that you're going to work on special teams, you're going to block, and you can also create in contested catch situations, you're going to play early. And so I think Tesla really stood out there. With Shavers, it's really every time you saw him for the Bills, he is making a big play downfield. For the Bills offense that needs some more, they're sort of in the Chiefsification of their offense at this point, where the run game has become so dynamic. You have given Josh Allen full control of this offense, but you still need that explosive player downfield. Tyrell Shavers, every time you saw him, he was making a big catch downfield. Every time you watched him, he was doing something explosive with the ball in his hands. And I think that's going to play. That's going to get him a spot on the 53. So I'm excited to see if they can incorporate him into the offense downfield, because you don't really have a lot of that downfield explosion for the Bills offense in the receiver room. So it should be really fun. And then Efton Chisholm, I was like, who is this guy? When you watch him early, I was like, oh my gosh. Like, I don't want to say it because they both played at Eastern Washington, but the choice routes, the toughness and physicality after the catch, I think I made a post where I was like, don't say it, don't say it, don't say it. The guy reminds me of Cooper Kupp a little bit, but it's just, again, that physicality and the ability to win after the catch that really stood out with Chisholm. He is really tough to tackle. His touchdown against Minnesota was a great example of his ability to create and just not go down on first contact. So really that stood out for me. And he has sort of won that spot. He has beat out a lot of guys like Javon Baker. He's beat out guys who were entrenched last year, but are not going to play because Chisholm's going to get those reps.
I think I tweeted out after the Shrine Bowl, because that's where he went to last spring or last winter. And I tweeted out, Efton Chisholm's a 5'10", 200-pound white slot receiver from Eastern Washington. You already have an image of what his game looks like in your head, and it's completely accurate. Like it just is. He's not fast. I think he ran the 4.6s as pro day, but he is shifty underneath. He's tough going over the middle of the field. He doesn't drop many passes. He just he is the stereotype, and it's worked out. I mean, he's probably a decade too late to really produce. If he was born 15 years prior, he would have been, a 1-2 punch with Julian Edelman for his entire career. But
I was going to say, yeah, he definitely would have been a Patriot.
But he's still a Patriot, so he still landed in the right spot from it, and he does look very good. I think he broke the most tackles after the catch of anyone at the receiving position this preseason. I got one more guy I want to shout out at receiver. Jackson Meeks, another Detroit Lion. Very impressed with him. I think he led all receivers, or he was top 3 all receivers in receiving yards this preseason. And with him, he blocked his ass off as well. if you're going to make this Detroit Lions roster, obviously that's a big thing to doing so. As a UDFA coming out of Syracuse, I think he 100% locked down the spot. We're obviously cut days tomorrow, 4 p.m. recording this on Monday morning, but I would be floored if he doesn't make it, given what I saw from him this preseason. So obviously Brad Holmes knows what he's doing, scouting. And that's how, like, the depth that they've gotten of late round guys, that's how you really know that your scouting staff is doing the damn thing.
Hey, I got one more. Mr. Vandross from the Windy City, Luther Burden III. Okay. Look, guy can play ball. And you know what? Once the media was like, oh, he can play, they interviewed a bunch of people from Missouri. Did you see this? They interviewed a bunch of people from Missouri and like where he grew up. And they were like, he was the best player we've ever seen. And then, he kind of he had a little dip, and nobody really said he had a little bit of a dip, but you kind of get that impression. And they're like, and now he's on fire again. And I'm like, bro, I'm so glad that the Chicago Bears got him. Not only is he a young player that can help and can run all the routes, and he's big and can win contested catches, but he's out there with two other really good receivers. So it's going to make him that much better. Luther Burden, I'd be remiss if I didn't say that.
I know you would. I knew it was coming. Because he impressed more than I thought it might take him a little bit more. We'll see if it translates to a role for him this season. All right, tight end, who you got?
This one might be a little bit of cheating. I don't care. Robbie Oots is my all preseason tight end. Over here, we respect the fullback.
Roll Tide.
As soon as he pulled up in the first game for the preseason, it was different. And you can tell with Clint Kubiak, the physicality, the 21 personnel. Robbie Oots not only was a factor in the passing game in terms of checkdowns, but the ability just to mow down everything in his way as a fullback. He was part of why I was super impressed with the Seahawks' ability to run the ball in the preseason, considering they were one of the worst rushing teams in the NFL last year. But having an actual fullback on the field helps create so many more problems for the defense. And a fullback like Oots, who is, I'm not going to say he's a throwback because he can catch the ball in the flat. They drew up some routes for him downfield, but he's a 270-pound fullback. This is a guy that's going to go, and you can use him to take on defensive ends. You can use him to knock down linebackers. It's not a guy that you want to just try and get out in space, but that physicality is going to mean so much for the Seahawks this year as they sort of retool this offense.
Oots he's a 5th rounder out of Alabama, 6'3", 270. So you hear 270 and you're like, okay, if that's like a tight end size, 6'5", that's, a bit, 6'3", 270 is like a center. There are centers who are like skinnier than this guy. He really is a ton of fun to watch. And in that offense, they're going to be using a lot of tight ends. I mean, they use 2-3 tight ends or 2 tight ends and a fullback a lot. There's a reason they draft him in the 5th round. I'll just say, I want to shout out 2 guys though. They're obviously very highly drafted, but I was very impressed with both in the limited time we got. Tyler Warren of the Indianapolis Colts, not only as a receiver, we knew that part. I thought as an inline blocker, he looked good, capable, comfortable in a way that just, he wasn't asked to do that much at Penn State. I think people just saw his size and were like, oh yeah, inline tight end. Sometimes, that works out, but he did not do much of that in Penn State's offense. Already looks fairly comfortable doing it in Indy. Terrence Ferguson, the other one for the Rams, had 2 different slot verticals where he stacked Rayshon Jenkins of the Cleveland Browns, former NFL starting safety. That's a good sort of immediate litmus test of how that guy's speed and juice will translate to the next level. So was very impressed with both those guys. Let's get to the offensive line. Left tackle position. Hotly contested here because this rookie class of left tackles all look good in my eyes. But who'd you go with?
There was some good tackle play, especially from this rookie class. I went with Josh Simmons largely because I remember before the draft, I'd said if Simmons didn't tear up his knee at Ohio State, he'd be the first offensive lineman off the board or first offensive tackle off the board. He looks the part so far for Kansas City. And again, it's just the athleticism and the movement skills that they're asking him to do some really difficult stuff. Brandon Thorne, obviously wonderful, fantastic. He put a cut up of a couple of his blocks against the Bears where he is scooping a backside defensive tackle. He's going out and getting an edge player. And I was just like, yeah, this is This is what it looks like when it comes to a first-round offensive tackle. As long as they have that spot locked up and there is some continuity there, this Chiefs offense is going to once again be really good because Simmons has the athleticism to where if he makes mistakes during the season, he has the athleticism to make up for it. That's why, it's not always like draft the great athlete, but being a great athlete covers for a whole lot of technical issues that you might have. And Simmons so far has really looked the part.
Kyle, you muted.
When they were in their heyday, the Chiefs offense, the right tackle was less than elite athlete in Mitchell Schwartz, but as cerebral and technical a player as there existed in the National Football League. You guys can attest to that. The left tackle was the first overall pick by the name of Eric Fisher, and another one of those guys, the Mitch Trubisky conversation, but he's a left tackle, so they're not going to ship him out. They're like, we're invested. He was athletic enough to get in space and do a lot of things externally, and I think they're going to have that benefit with Josh Simmons. But JP, what a football guy. The first type of block that you discussed, or one of the first types of block you discussed, was the backside cutoff. And for real running game aficionados, you understand that the front is for show and the back's where you end up going. The backside is the front side. And I used to call it cowabunga, dude. You're riding the wave. You're going to press the wave, and carve that thing up. It's a cut up. It's not a bend back. And a lot of it is determined how much real estate you have on these plays, whether it's a first down or a touchdown is determined by that backside guard getting to the second level defender, and it's that backside tackle being able to cut off that three. Josh Simmons did it so effing smooth this past game. It's not supposed to look that easy. There's a couple guys with trademark styles on the backside. Trent Williams goes with the snatch technique. I used to call it the backdoor technique. A lot of coaches say don't do that. Josh Simmons doesn't have to have any gimmicks. He's going to take his first step. He's going to beat the 4-eye or the 3 technique there. He's going to gain ground with a second step. And next thing you know, you're cut off from the play and he's driving your ass to Missouri or Kansas or whatever is further from the stadium. Josh Simmons mirrored excellently in pass protection. He had anchor and strength. He had a plan in the run game. They hit a home run. He's going to be there for a long time, and he's going to play. We used to say he'll go to Hawaii. He'll go to Hawaii a lot.
Maybe not if you're playing for the Chiefs, because is the Pro Bowl still before?
He'll get the invite to Hawaii a lot, and he will respectfully decline.
Pick 32, though, is not supposed to. I think the biggest thing is it's pick 32. Pick 32 offensive tackles, they look like Tyler Guyton usually, right? They look like back end of the first round offensive tackles don't start for you. They look like Josh Connerly, who's probably not going to start for the Commanders, right? They are usually projects who there's a reason they fell there. Simmons is almost the opposite. Like the reason he fell there is just we didn't know if he was going to be healthy or not. And oh, by the way, he's healthy. And holy poop, the rest of the NFL is kind of in trouble now because that guy was never supposed to be pick 32. I'll give 2 honorable mentions. Obviously, Will Campbell, he didn't play much, but I'll throw him out there as well. Jordan Morgan for the Green Bay Packers. I thought he looked great in his time at left tackle. They tried him at guard as a rookie. Obviously, he was left tackle at Arizona. Could be taking the job from Rasheed Walker. We'll see how that plays out in the coming couple weeks. And then Kelvin Banks for the New Orleans Saints. I thought, given that he actually played starters for most of the time, like he was going up against Trayvon Walker, Josh Allen for the Jags. He was going up against Jonah Ellis for the Broncos. And really, he didn't give up a pressure according to PFF pass protection. Not a lot of reps where I was even like worried about him. So very encouraging sign there, given how much they needed pass pro there in New Orleans. All right, left guard position.
I went with Gray Zabel from the Seattle Seahawks. You don't really describe left guards as this guy can flat out go, but Gray Zabel can go. Like this dude can move. There are a lot of plays where I think there was one against the Chiefs where he's hurdling over another offensive lineman that fell to get to the backside linebacker. And you don't really see a lot of guards kind of just do that hop over a fallen player and just go and make the block so easily. Zabel's ability to move, and I think that's just the biggest thing for the Seahawks offensive line. And what really stood out, we're going to get to a couple more Seahawks linemen here, but that ability to move and ability to get to the second level for their interior of the offensive line really stood out for me watching them play. It's part of the reason why they led the NFL in the preseason in rushing yards. And I think that ability for Zabel to not only get out and move in the run game, he didn't look overwhelmed in the passing game. I think there are a couple points where some real power guys kind of got into his chest, but they mixed up his sets. They mixed up his plans. So I think Zabel really stood out just in, you take a swing on a North Dakota State guy who played tackle, move him to guard, and it looks like it worked so far.
Hey, we talked about Gray Zabel at length. And when I first started doing Push in the Pile off-season programming, Mike was like, here's a list of some guys to get you started to take a look at. And when I watched Gray Zabel, I saw a guy who reminded me of myself. And I'm glad you brought up the ability to move, because as an offensive lineman, we were just talking about the backside of plays. And then here you go again, just coming right at my fetish, which is great angles and athletic ability at the guard position. I loved what I saw from him staying on his track. Whatever was in his track was getting moved. He was violent in his lower half, always running, always using that to his strength. And look, John Schneider has never been a fan of drafting guards and hasn't seen the importance in it. Well, I hope he's watching practice, and I hope he gets an opportunity to watch tape with his new head coach, because the guard is important, and Gray Zabel is a badass day one for the Seahawks.
Kyle, to kind of echo your point there, or the point both you guys are making, I think not a lot of offensive linemen on tape when you watch them. Am I like, that guy could probably play another sport, right? Like that guy could go maybe swing a baseball bat, or that guy could go, in the low post and have post moves. But when you see the ones that can, those are the ones that I want, and that's Gray Zabel to a T. It's like that guy, when you do stuff the way he is, he could have, in another life, if he focused on something else, been, a great first baseman or something. Like you see that natural coordination, athleticism, and those are the guys that more often than not you want.
Lane Johnson was a quarterback. Jordan Mailata carried the rugby ball.
Yes.
These guys aren't just football players. You know what I'm saying?
All right. The other guy I want to shout out just quickly, Dylan Fairchild. The pick got a lot of hate when they got him in the third round, but he looks like he's their starter. He played really well, in my opinion. Looked like stronger than I remember him at Georgia. Thought his hands were really good. Now, obviously, it's preseason. It was 44 snaps, but at least for the Bengals, when you haven't had a lot to be encouraged about of recent draft picks, this one gave me a little bit more than some of their others. Let's get to center.
I went with Jalen Sandell from the Seattle Seahawks. And I think the biggest reason I went with him was he was in a position battle with Olu Oluwatimi for the starting center job. And if you take what week 3 of the preseason means for most guys, Sandell didn't dress, meaning that he probably won that job. And I think that he won that job because with the new offensive scheme coming around, it benefits, like we talked about, guys that can move, guys that can get out and get up to the second level. He had a lot of really impressive plays in the run game. And I think that ability to get to the second level is going to really make a lot of waves for the Seahawks offensive line and their prioritization of that movement and agility getting to the second level. So I want to shout out Jalen Sandell for winning that job, and especially considering that he was a guy that was sort of an afterthought when it came to that start. Everybody thought Oluwatimi was going to just lock up that job immediately, and Sandell came and took it right out from under him. So I think Sandell winning that job really puts him on this team for me.
I wonder if there's any, because Sandell actually was the left tackle the year prior with Gray Zabel at left guard. So they played next to each other already. I wonder, obviously you'd flip it, but I wonder do you think, Kyle, in your expert opinion, would that have any lasting remnants to now?
You're saying if you played in the same room with somebody?
So in 2023, Jalen Sandell was the left tackle at North Dakota State. Gray Zabel was the left guard.
Oh, dude. I mean,
and now Zabel's left guard, Sandell's center.
There's nothing like the relationship you have with the man next to you. in the game of football, particularly offensive line, and that stuff carries with you. There's unspoken communication, nonverbals, that kind of stuff lasts a lifetime. I think about the list of guys I played next to. Hronis Grasu was my center at Oregon. And I went to the league. He stayed at Oregon. Then he went to the league. He became a Chicago Bear. And I remember the first week that he was there was the first week of a lot of rookies being there with the vets. And he was the only guy that I could be like, well, if shit goes really south, him and I could do our nonverbal stuff and we're going to be all right. That stuff matters, man.
All right, my other two honorable mentions here. We mentioned Will Lampkin. We've talked about him enough, but got to just throw him another bone. And then Luke Whippler. I think Willie's making
tiny little bone.
Like one of the ones made for like the 0 to, you look up dog treats, it's like 0 to 15 pounds. He gets the 0 to 15 pound bones.
It's like Scrappy Doo.
Yeah.
And then the other one, Luke Whippler, backup center for the Cleveland Browns, former 6th rounder. Very impressed with what he did this preseason. Good athlete, good feet. Didn't look like he was one of the guys when he's coming out. I'm like, once he gets strong enough, I think you're going to get a darn good center. And he looks like finally, after 2 seasons in the league, he may be strong enough. All right, right guard position. You're going to round out the trio here of Seattle Seahawks.
I'm rounding out the interior of the Seattle Seahawks and going with Anthony Bradford here. I was so impressed with his play in the preseason, especially coming off of 2024, where he looked like an absolute liability for the Seahawks and that offense under Ryan Grubb. Again, it goes back to this offense, and hopefully it carries over into the regular season. It looks like it just fits the Seattle offensive lineman a lot more. Anthony Bradford looked a lot more comfortable in both the run and passing game. I think some of his pass sets were really fun to watch. But again, they're prioritizing that movement, that ability to get to the second level. And he had some plays where he's driving folks all the way to the sideline. And I was stunned. I was really surprised that Anthony Bradford looked this confident and looked this comfortable in this offense. So I just wanted to shout out Bradford for turning around what was a rough 2024 into what hopefully might be a really good bounce back year.
Yeah, and I was really disappointed with Christian Haynes because I thought this new scheme change would be perfect for him. And he did look better in the running game. He just cannot anchor in pass protection. And if a guy can't anchor pass protection, you just can't have him out there. You're going to get bull rushed every single play in the NFL. And it's like, until he changes that guy will not be seeing the football field, unfortunately. I want to give a little shout out to Ed Ingram because it was probably the best he's looked in an NFL uniform. That's obviously, if you've watched Ed Ingram over the course of his career, not saying a ton. Former Minnesota Vikings 2nd round pick, traded this offseason to Houston Texans. I think at least gives them insurance, even if maybe he's not the day one starter there. All right, last position on the O-line, right tackle. Who you got?
I went with Armand Membu from the New York Jets. Again, if you draft really good athletes, the really good athletes look like really good athletes early. And Membu showed the athleticism for a Jets team that is going to run the ball a lot. But the thing that stood out to me the most was the thing that stood out to me when watching him at Missouri. He is unfazed in pass protection. He is such a calm, collected guy who knows where his strengths are and how he wins. And I think knowing how you win and how you operate best as a right tackle, especially being a young right tackle, is going to help him so much in the NFL because he's already a really good athlete. But having that ability to know what your plan is, know what works for you, is going to really help in this offense and kind of give Justin Fields at least enough time in the pocket to make something happen and also be a factor in the run game.
He's such a weapon. He's something that you can really use to tailor make your offense with. And again, the theme here, unintended theme, is athleticism at the offensive line position. Obviously, strength, point of attack strength, being ferocious, all that stuff is great. But if you can't move, you can't play. And Membu's got that rare combination of strength, explosion, and movement skills, which is why RAS score, RAS God, Armand Membu, that stuff shows up, dude. And it'll benefit him well because even when the sky's falling around him, he can still let his freak flag fly. And that's why you say he plays calm, he looks calm. That's called confidence in yourself as an athlete, okay? And when you've got a plan and you're confident, watch out everybody else.
I'll just say this. Armand Membu, his explosiveness, the play strength, it is so obvious and it's translated very early on to still look like a physically dominant dude. If I'm stacking up all the rookie tackles, though, that played, and again, I know assume Josh Connolly is going to be starting. I think he's the one I'm most worried about. Now, he went to the best situation of them to protect, I think, his weaknesses, but I still think his angles, manipulating space at times, he can get swam. He can just miss his landing marks. And then his reactive athleticism from there needs to get better. He just needs to get a little bit more honed in. I think the other guys, whether it's Kelvin Banks, whether it's Will Campbell, whether it's Josh Simmons, I think they'll be a little bit more consistent this year. But Membu, once he does figure that out, the guy is unbelievably gifted. I want to give a shout out to Talia Sfuaga. Back to his right tackle position. He played at Oregon State, and he looks at home there. Looked at home there this preseason. I think this shakeup for the Saints offensive line is going to work wonders. I think everyone looked better at their respective positions that they were back to. So there you have it. There's all preseason offense team. Get a quick break here and get to defense side of the ball.
You can't count on Derek's tongue skills.
Oh, Tony, I think it hit the ground.
But you can always count on Sundays with the NFL on CBS and Paramount Plus.
All right, edge rushers. Who we got?
I'm starting with the Chicago Bears, Austin Booker. I was such a massive fan of Austin Booker entering the draft coming from Kansas. You saw the length, you saw the athleticism, you saw the burst around the corner. I thought he needed just to put on more weight, add some more reps to his repertoire. He looks stronger. He plays stronger this year. He has shown the ability to win with a long arm, which was something that he really didn't use at Kansas. He was much more of a speed and flexibility guy, but having that counterpunch as a pass rusher, having that ability to win through a lineman's chest as well as going around him is going to help him get reps as a designated pass rusher. I think there were times, of course, in this preseason where he looked a little bit like a deer in headlights a little bit against the run sometimes, but when you want a designated pass rusher and you have a guy with the athleticism and the length and the flexibility that Austin Booker has, you can tell that he's putting it together as a pass rusher. The next guy I went with was Caleb Murphy from the Los Angeles Chargers. Every time you look up, it's Caleb Murphy getting a sack. And I think the thing that stood out to me the most with him was the hand usage. It was the timing that he was using his hands with. He was winning with he used a couple of Superman cross chops. He was able to get some bend around the corner. And for a Chargers team that has a whole lot of guys that win with speed to power, converting speed to power, having a changeup guy like Murphy, who is, I guess he's going to be that edge 4 in this edge group, having him be able to come on the field on third downs and show offensive linemen a different pitcher. You know, it's like facing a relief pitcher. It's facing a guy that throws 102 instead of throwing 80 and throwing some changeups in there. It is just having a different variety of guy. And I think Caleb Murphy showing that he can win with flexibility, win with that burst around the corner is going to really help the Chargers pass rush room.
Caleb Murphy is 260 pounds, and he plays left guard on the punt team. And for the last 2.5 minutes, I've just been pressing play and rewinding him running 55 yards down the field and being in on a tackle. It's impressive. Okay, you play special teams, you rush the passer. There will be plenty of opportunities for Caleb Murphy to make plays for Jim Harbaugh.
I want to go back to Booker for just a second because he's also still very young. The guy is 22. He doesn't even turn 23 until after the season. He never should have come out realistically. Like if his goal was to, get a big contract right away, like he was never going to be a top 50 pick given the inconsistency of his tape, given he played like 500 career snaps in college. Guy was a backup for 2 seasons, transfers to Kansas, plays 500 snaps, goes to the NFL, but was always going to be a work in progress. But the payoff always could have been really high. And especially with Dayo Odeyingbo kind of looking like, maybe not necessarily
no creativity. It just was like, the whole defensive front from the Bears minus Austin Booker has been a little bit lackluster. We talked about Dexter a lot last season. It looked like he was just glued to guards all preseason.
So we'll see. Maybe not throwing their fastballs. Maybe not giving the full repertoire just yet. Maybe.
But we thought Austin Booker wasn't going to get an opportunity to play, and now we're framing this as like you throw the changeup in there. You get the guy in there who can get after the quarterback because we don't want to see Patrick Mahomes back there like we did in the preseason, buddy. Okay, not good. And Gardner Minshew for that matter.
A couple guys I want to shout out. Jonah Ellis Denver Broncos, last year's third rounder. I think he's just going to be another piece of that monster, that Medusa that they got with so many different guys that can attack you on the defensive front. And then Nate Lynn of the Detroit Lions, second-year edge, was UDFA out of William and Mary. I was very impressed with this guy. Great bend, violent hands. I think he knows how to rush the passer. Would not be surprised if I'm blanking on the guy whose career got kind of cut short in Detroit, who was like this guy before. You know what I'm talking about, JP? Who had same year as Aiden Hutchinson, has a bunch of sacks. He was from, I think he may be from an HBCU.
Oh, is it James Houston?
Yes, James Houston. And then he had, I think, broke his leg in half, and he really hasn't been back since. But had an awesome rookie season. Again, Brad Holmes knows how to scout. When you get the amount of guys who are day three in UDFAs that are making an impact, I think Nate Lynn's not only making this team, I think he might make an impact for them, given what I saw in preseason. All right, defensive tackles. I love the first one. The first one was just like the easiest layup as soon as where he got drafted. Everyone knew this guy was going to be a player.
So my first one is Jamari Caldwell from the Los Angeles Chargers, but I want to spend some time talking about the second guy, Aden Huntington from the Cleveland Browns. Kyle, you mentioned Caleb Murphy playing on punt and outrunning guys on punt coverage. Aden Huntington is a 6 foot, 280-pound defensive tackle who led the Browns in special teams tackles this preseason. God. He also played fullback for the Browns this preseason. And he also had 1.5 sacks on defense this preseason. He made the team as a UDFA from Tulane. The athleticism stands out for, again, like a 280-pound defensive tackle. Ran a 4.64 40-yard dash. I think he had a 38-inch vertical jump. And again, it's that burst. It's the quickness. You don't play defensive tackles on special teams on kickoff coverage if they're not high-tier athletes. So I think the best thing you can do as a UDFA is make yourself useful in a lot of different ways. And Huntington showing that he can win as a special teamer. You can play him on defense. You can play him on offense if you wanted to. That's going to play. That is going to get him a lot of reps. And then Jamari Caldwell, I mean, I was a huge fan of the guy coming out of Oregon. If he's like a fire hydrant, you can't move him. And he showed that ability to just not be moved in the run game. When the Chargers drafted him, I was like, that's their Puna Ford replacement. And he's shown that he can play on early downs and sort of rotate out. He's shown a little bit of pass rush pop also, which got me excited. But Jamari Caldwell's ability just to stop the run in the middle of that defense is going to be really useful for the Chargers this season.
He's got that Photoshop build. He's got that build like somebody clicked and dragged his torso a little bit. I played against a couple guys like that. Let me tell you, they're all hard to move. All right. One guy that I think about who was a little bit more robust than this gentleman here was Vince Wilfork. And I'll tell you what, this is a point in my career where I was snatching 315 pounds over my head for fun. I couldn't move Vince Wilfork. You get a guy like this, and it is a thorn in the side of your running game the entire day. And if he's got an ounce of talent in the pass rush department, that's gold right there.
Huntington, to go back for him just a second. He already made the roster. Kevin Stefanski said after the weekend that he's on the roster as a UDFA. He played edge last year, though. He's played defensive tackle over the course of his career, but last year at Tulane, he was rushing the passer off the edge. And I remember watching his tape and this was after I saw his testing numbers. I go back and watch his tape, and I'm like, what is this? Like, this is one of the weirdest defensive prospects I've can remember. Now, he is a little stiff. I'm not going to say this guy, you see the testing numbers, like all world potential, there's a reason he was still a UDFA, but with that kind of effort and what he put on tape this preseason, that's a guy you want in your D-line rotation wholesale. So he's going to stick around the league for a while.
The way you just described him, a little bit stiff, but also fun to watch and out of place. I remember watching Pernell McPhee rush the edge, and he would just bludgeon tackles. It was a good player.
Also the same recruiting class at Kent State as CJ West. So whoever was scouting their DTs at that point, I think needs a ring. You get 2 DTs like that, 2 NFL DTs at Kent State in one class. You're doing something right. I want to shout out 2 guys. One, Yaya Black for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Oh, yeah.
I was floored by his tape because at Iowa, never saw this. Like, never even saw the violence that he was playing with on a consistent basis here this preseason. Feels like very much a Steelers sort of defensive tackle, massive, long arms, and just wants to kick the ass of the guy in front of him. Very impressive in this preseason. And then Aeneas Peebles for the Baltimore Ravens. I saw, of all the young DTs rushing the passer, this guy got after it in the preseason. Now, it was third and fourth quarter stuff, but I think at minimum, he can be a third down sort of defensive tackle that if that's the only down he's playing, you'll still get positive production out of him compared to a lot of the DTs you're finding on day 3. So those two guys want to give a shout out. Let's get to linebacker. Who we got?
Ooh, breaking news.
Oh.
Terry McLaurin agrees to a 3-year contract extension with the Commanders. JP, what say you?
Good. This is good for both sides. I think going into this, I was of the belief that both these sides need each other. Terry McLaurin needs the Commanders, and I think Commanders needed Terry McLaurin's ability to win on the outside. I haven't seen any numbers yet, but keeping a guy who is as good as Terry McLaurin and has shown that he is good with your young quarterback as you sort of build this roster to win meaningful games in the playoffs right now, keeping your star receiver around who is one of the best, who had one of the best wide receiver quarterback duos in the NFL last year, keeping those guys around is a good thing.
Yeah, I wonder what the actual, so it's 3 years, $96 million. I wonder where the funny money comes in on this and how much he's actually going to get.
That's called year 3 money.
Yeah. Well, because we discussed, if it's like 2 years, 50, and then year 3 is like this fake $46 million number that he's just never going to get to.
He's got to get 2,000 yards in year 3.
Yeah, right. He basically has to age like Jerry Rice to get to that third season. But if you've just seen how receivers have aged at this point of their careers of late, Terry 30 years old now, I believe, or about to turn 30 years old in September. If you've seen that, you just know that you probably don't want a guy into age 33, which would be the last year of his deal. So interested to see where the numbers come out. But Terry McLaurin, the one thing I said about him is not a lot of treading the tires, didn't play a lot at Ohio State, hasn't gotten too banged up over the course of his NFL career. So when you're in the
great
window,
dude. Okay.
Yes.
It seems to me that Dan Quinn and this group in Washington have just been like, we just want dudes. Okay. Because I got to hang out with Terry McLaurin this offseason. I'd never met him before. I've been around a lot of receivers. Okay. Without saying much about receivers, I've been around a lot of them. I didn't stop and stay with them for a while. I stopped and chatted with Terry McLaurin for a while. Impressive dude. I love watching him play. And to take a guy like Jaden Daniels, number 1 weapon, away would be criminal. We'd all be bitching about it. Let's be honest. So good on the Commanders, man. And now you go play football.
Yeah, when you got that young quarterback rookie deal, you can overpay a little bit at other positions to try to push the chips to the edge of the table if that has to be the case. All right, linebacker, back to the all-preseason team. Who we got?
I went with a rookie and also a vet change positions. I went with Carson Schlesinger from the Cleveland Browns, and I want to shout out Jamal Adams for making waves as a linebacker for the Raiders.
Crazy.
I think that Jamal Adams probably was the best linebacker for the Raiders this preseason. And again,
not saying much, but yeah,
it's not
it's not a star-studded group.
That quickness to diagnose closer to the line of scrimmage, the trigger to go and get plays downhill, that is going to be important for a Raiders defense that is going to have to create negative plays if they're going to want to get off the field. They have to get sacks, TFLs, turnovers. You can use him as a blitzer, which I think he was at his best as a safety. But now closer to the line of scrimmage, his eyes are a lot better. And I think that's happens for a lot of guys. Your eyes are just a lot better closer to the line of scrimmage. So Jamal Adams being basically their will linebacker is going to be really helpful for them. Schlesinger, I was a big fan of coming out of UCLA, just the range, the instincts. And I think the biggest thing that worried me about him was the play strength, just the ability to not get swallowed up when you're in the box against 330-pound guards. But in Cleveland, it looks like he's just playing a lot stronger, and he still has that quickness to make those tackles get get stops, especially. I think the speed he hasn't lost a step despite weighing like 242 pounds is what he weighed at the combine, but that might be all water weight. But if he has put on some weight, can add some more play strength, I think Jim Schwartz can do a lot of really fun stuff with Schlesinger as a coverage guy.
I'm going to go back to, what we were just talking about there with having you were talking about Jamal Adams and the dangers that it can pose to defenses, his ability to diagnose things, put his foot in the ground and just shoot his gun immediately. There's only a handful of teams in the NFL who have edge rushers that demand 5 sets of eyeballs. I mean, we may have to slide our whole group to go deal with Max Crosby. And what does that do? It takes the attention away from the offensive line's awareness of where the hell a guy like Jamal Adams is. So I anticipate that this Raiders group is going to let Max continue to wreak havoc over there on the edge. And then every once in a while, you sprinkle in that Jamal Adams, unseen, untouched, unheard. And those are the plays that end quickly. And like you said, negative plays. Get this team off the field. They're going to gamble a little bit. They're in Vegas. Let's blitz some guys.
So how safety has kind of been the cornerback destination. You lose a step, you go to safety. Are we going to start seeing linebacker be like the safety end of career destination?
It's the circle of life for a defender.
Hit the weights, maybe take some Winstraw this offseason and you're back in business. Like you're a box linebacker now. I don't know. We'll see. But he did look good.
Yeah. Kyle Duggar is the next in line for that move from safety to linebacker.
100%.
We're throwing it back to Deion Buchanan moving to linebacker again.
Yes. But his was Deion Buchanan was like necessary. That one was very early on.
You guys never had to chase Ryan Shazier, okay?
Cool.
Oh my God. When I think about these lighter than usual linebackers, okay? It's scary enough because they eliminate angles for offensive linemen. They just kill your angles. And you get guys that are long like Shazier. And we were robbed of such a good player with Ryan. That's the archetype, dude. That's like the prototype linebacker. I'd rather run into Ray Maluga 50 times than have to chase some gazelle for 60 plays. Okay.
Tires you out. All right. My other guy, I had one honorable mention. Tyrone Hopper, the former third rounder last year, 2024 third rounder with the Green Bay Packers. I was floored by how good he looked this preseason. One, because he was awful last preseason. Two, because he was a guy that pretty much everyone considered a massive reach to be pick 92, but 13 tackles, no missed tackles this preseason. That was a massive issue for him at Missouri coming out. Issue for him last year in the preseason and on special teams, but they might have a player. I mean, his ability to make make offensive linemen, make blockers miss in short areas looked tremendous. Was playing so much faster in terms of how he was diagnosing stuff. So in a Packers linebacker room that's kind of been much maligned until last year's draft, they might have hit 2 home runs in last year's draft. We shall see, though. Let's get to the secondary. Cornerback position. Who we got?
So my 2 corners are Rocky Sin and Eric Rogers. If you know me, I love corners that tackle. If you are willing to tackle, if you are able to tackle, you are going to play for my hypothetical football team. Rocky Sin for the Detroit Lions, the thing that stood out is just he is willing and able to tackle. And I think that's going to play, especially for Detroit, as they kind of retool their secondary and figure out what works, who works. Rocky Sin has kind of bounced around the NFL, but I think he's found a spot here where, he can play on special teams. You want to play him against the run and you want to get him in one-on-one situations. He had a couple of really nice tackles in the Hall of Fame game against Los Angeles on the goal line, where, again, you're seeing NFL offenses that want to force corners to tackle.
We are running at corners, by the way.
Yeah,
okay.
You want to run at corners. They don't get paid to tackle. But Rocky Sin, I think, has the ability to stick on this team because of his tackling ability. And then Eric Rogers, the Chargers just seem to know how to pick him when it comes to corners. They found Tarheeb Still last year, who was a starter who was really good for them. Eric Rogers really stood out. I want to go with Nico Reed here as well, but I think the reactionary speed. He didn't run a very fast 4.67 at the pro day, but the instincts and the timing of being able to trigger on plays quickly. I think that kind of makes up the gap that you lose in speed is being quick with your eyes. And Eric Rodgers showed really quick eyes, really quick trigger on passes to the outside. So I think I want to see what they do with their secondary because they have a lot of interesting corners that might make the practice squad, that might not make the team. But Eric Rodgers really stood out to me.
It's funny we were talking about the corner to safety. Rock Ya-Sin's like the perfect. he is the perfect guy to, hey, he failed the corner because he can't really cover guys anymore, but he's a heck of a tackler. And so they've kind of given him a little bit at corners preseason, a little bit at safety. And honestly, I think he's going to be in that safety room long term, or at least this as like a backup to those two starters, because he looked very comfortable there. And then to the Chargers scheme thing, they know what their corners are supposed to do in their scheme. You know, it's a lot of off quarters. It's not playing press man, follow someone around the football field. And when that's the case, you don't need to run a 4-3, right? You don't need you don't need the sort of quick area athleticism and long speed that it takes to mirror a guy in a full route tree. You kind of just need someone who plays fast, who changes directions fast, who sees things fast. And that's how they've gotten by on corners that, you know, not a lot of NFL fans probably know their names, but Eric Rodgers is a guy who could very easily play in that scheme despite, you know, like you said, running a 4.67 as pro day. All right, slot and safety.
So my slot is one of my favorite guys from this past draft class.
Mine
Jacob
too.
Parrish from Tampa Bay Buccaneers, formerly of Kansas State. To play nickel in the NFL, especially at 5'10", you got to be a little crazy. You got to be a little bit of a psychopath. Taron Johnson for the Bills, one of my favorite players in the NFL because he's just a little psychopath. He's going to throw his body at everybody. Jacob Parrish is mean as hell. First of all, like he is going to get in your face. He's going to make a lot of plays in the run game as a tackler. He's not a liability. He's a strength as a tackler if you want to put him in the box. But what he showed to me was that quickness in man coverage. I think at Kansas State, he showed a little bit of, he kind of guessed as a man coverage guy. I think he made a little bit more plays as a slot defender and man. So I'm excited to see what the Bucs do now that they have what looks to be a fun problem at slot. Do you play Tyke Smith back at safety and move Jacob Parrish into the slot? Do you play Jacob Parrish on the outside while Benjamin Morrison gets back to 100%? Mm-hmm. What they have a fun problem in their secondary, and I'm excited to see what they do with it.
Yeah, I love what they did in this year's draft, man. And obviously part of it was that I had Jacob Parrish as I think like 51st on my draft board, and they got him in the third round. I just think this guy, despite being 5'10", is an NFL corner, and not only just like I think he could be an outside corner too, if you really want him to. Like you said, like he could legitimately be an upgrade from Zion McCollum on the outside, because McCollum is uber talented in his own right, but very up and down over the course of the last season. So they just have options, right? That's what you want in the secondary. You're, as they say, you're only as strong as your weakest link. They don't really have weak links now in the secondary, and not only don't have weak links, they got backups who can come in and play too. So a good problem to have if you're the Tampa Bay Bucs. All right, safety.
My two safeties are Jaden Hicks from the Kansas City Chiefs and Andrew Makuba from the Philadelphia Eagles. I sort of struggled with Drew Makuba's scouting report at Texas because the instincts and just the physicality were there. I worried about how big he was. I worried about the slight frame. I worried about him being slender a little bit. But when you make plays on the ball, that matters more than anything else. When you can make plays and you can get your hands on passes and not only turn them into turnovers, but turn them into explosives. I guess you call them like live ball turnovers in the NBA. If you can get live ball turnovers, I think that's going to make a lot of waves in a Eagles secondary that is still very good. Might have some questions at outside corner, might have some questions in the secondary. We'll see what happens there. But Andrew Makuba looks like a guy that could play early and looks like another guy that, you know, Vic Fangio really love in that defense. Jaden Hicks, I pegged him as a breakout player this year. I think that he was really good in sort of replacement of Justin Reed, and Justin Reed even talked about after he left, like Jaden Hicks is going to be the next guy up. And he just looked the part. this preseason. He looked like he knew what he was doing. He was in control of the secondary. And I think his continuity is going to play really well in that Chiefs secondary where, again, there's a lot more moving parts than we associate with the Chiefs. So I'd peg those two guys my standout to safety.
Yeah, I couldn't believe he fell to day 3 when he did. I had him as top 100 player. A lot of people did. And he was a young guy coming out. You know, anytime a junior nowadays falls to day 3, you're like, I wonder why. And still don't really know why, but he obviously doesn't look like a day 3 pick at this point. I want to give a shout out, though, to Jonas Anker, 3rd round pick, New Orleans Saints. He played a ton this preseason because I don't think he's penciled in to be a starter for them. But maybe at some point he will because he was awesome. I mean, the athlete is so good. He didn't miss a single tackle all preseason. He plays so physically, was at the catch point on numerous occasions, picked off a pass. I just think that guy, he could be starting very early on in his NFL career. Obviously, safety is a difficult position to translate to the NFL. You know, up the middle of the field, linebacker, safety, when you got to read a bunch of stuff, it gets difficult to translate right away. But I think he might be able to give him a sophomore in this preseason.
Jonas Sanker, know where he's from?
UVA.
Charlottesville, Virginia. It's where
Is he from there?
Where the kid's from. He actually went to Monticello High School, which, no, I think he went to Covenant. Did he go to Covenant? Yeah, Covenant. So that's the rival school of our school, St. Anne's Belfield. I thought tough people didn't go to private schools in Shelter, Virginia.
Well, a couple did. We know one. And Joe Saker, maybe the only other one in the world. All right, there you have it. There is our all preseason team. Very excited to have JP Acosta joining us every single show from here on out. We will be back on Wednesday. Until then, keep pushing.